The Kuchisake-onna. Akiko was running late on her way home from school. She had stayed late after class to discuss her grade on an essay with her teacher, and now found herself in a dead run attempting to catch the last bus home. Winter was coming, so the days were getting longer and darker, and the sun had already begun to set. To her dismay, just as she rounded the corner to the street at which the bus stop sat, she saw the last glimpse of taillights fading away. Great. Now she would have to walk. She sighed and continued on her way. No use in wasting any more time. The walk home was quiet and surprisingly empty. Nothing but the sound of the cold wind blowing and the echoing of her footfalls. It unnerved her a bit, as usually the streets were still quite lively at this hour. But nonetheless, she continued her long trek home. Just then, off in the distance, she heard a woman weeping. It was tragic. She sounded heartbroken, and Akiko desperately wanted to comfort her, so she began to walk in the direction of the cries. By then, it was dark, and hard to tell exactly where she was, but she was very concerned for the well-being of the crying woman. A short ways ahead of her, she could make out the heaving form of what appeared to be a distraught woman. Akiko rushed up to her and asked if she was all right. The woman stopped crying and looked up at her with the most intense, icy blue eyes she had ever seen. The woman was breathtakingly gorgeous. She had long, raven hair, entrancing blue eyes, and a glowing porcelain complexion. The bottom half of her face was covered up by a red surgical mask, which led Akiko to believe that she was perhaps suffering from a cold, as that was a common practice in Japan. But regardless of the mask, the woman's beauty was apparent to be seen. Slowly, the woman stood up and began to approach Akiko. The air began to grow clammy and cold, and Akiko felt the urge to run. But she couldn't break the gaze of the woman's piercing eyes. The woman came to a halt right before Akiko, before leaning in to whisper something tenderly in her ear. "Am I beautiful?" Akiko's eyes widened in confusion. Without thinking, she stammered, Of course, you're very beautiful." The woman pulled back for a moment. Carefully, she raised her hands to her face and removed the surgical mask that was covering her mouth. A silent scream escaped Akiko's lips as the woman's jaw fell loose, revealing a jagged slice from ear to ear. The woman began to approach her once more, her mutilated jaw bouncing freely as she walked. "Am I beautiful now?" Akiko tried to scream, but before the noise could escape, the woman pounced. They never did find Akiko's body. Investigators found nothing but a bloody pair of sewing shears in an alley about 2 blocks from her home. The breakdown. The story of the Kuchisake-onna is well known in Japan. Its roots can be traced all the way back to the Edo period. There is a legend of a samurai who was married to an incredibly beautiful woman. Because of her looks, he was always worried about her faithfulness. One day, he accused her of adultery and proceeded to slice her mouth from ear to ear with his katana. He then told her, "Who will find you beautiful now?" thinking it would assure her loyalty. But In a fit of grief, the woman killed herself. Her vengeful spirit then returned, searching for her hateful husband. This urban legend was once again popularized in the 1970s as the story of a woman chasing children into traffic began to circulate. It was said that while chasing the children, the woman was hit by a car. The result of the impact was a morbid Glasgow grin. This legend seems to come in waves and has spread across many different countries over time. Perhaps the scariest element to it is the idea that the Kuchisake-onna could be lurking anywhere. It is perhaps difficult for those in Western countries to understand, but in many parts of Asia, it is very common to see people wearing surgical masks in an attempt to keep the spread of colds and illnesses down in close contact with other people. So the Kuchisake-onna could literally be anywhere at any time, and it would be almost impossible to know if she was following you. There are many different versions to the story, but it is said that if you are approached by the Kuchisake-onna, you have a few options in how you respond. First, she will ask you, "Watashi kirei?" or "Am I beautiful?" If you say no, she will reveal her weapon and kill you on the spot. There is no way to escape her. She moves incredibly quick and will never cease to hunt you until you are dead. If you happen to say yes, she will then remove her mask and ask once more, "Watashi kirei?" No matter what you say at this point, she will kill you. It is also fun to note that while this is completely lost in translation to English, the second time she asks you, she will cleverly mispronounce kirei as kire, changing the meaning from "Am I beautiful?" to quite literally, "Shall I cut?" In some versions of the story, there is no way to escape her wrath, but in others, a final option remains. It is said that when she first asks you if she is beautiful, if you respond with, "You are average," she will become confused, giving you the opportunity to run away before she regains her senses. Regardless of which version of the story you may have heard, one thing is for certain. Should you spot a strange woman in a surgical mask at night, run. Heaven forbid you feel breath upon the back of your neck and a seemingly innocent question.
私、きれい